Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We are coming to you live on February 18th. Today, you're tuning in for the first day of the Executive Leadership and Engagement in the Time of Crisis series. So this is going to be day 1 of 4. Your instructor is Dr. William R. Latchford, who has a Doctorate of Criminal Justice, and he is the president of the Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could join us for today's webinar. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. So this is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. You can access the slides for today's course as well as any of the other courses here on the new learning platform. There is a courses section over to the left-hand side on that menu panel. I am also going to copy and paste the slides into the chat for you right now. It says today's presentation slides, and there is a link you can follow. Okay, if today's your first webinar on our new platform, know that any of the webinars moving forward you will have access to because you've already registered for the website, and you'll just log in whenever a webinar is going on, and you'll click on that green banner at the top of the screen, and that'll take you to today's webinar. We do ask that when you join, you select listen only just to cut down on any kind of audio feedback for our instructor. And if you find that your audio is coming out of a different device than you'd prefer it to be coming out of, you can come down to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a little telephone icon. And if you click on that, it'll list off all your microphone and speaker devices, and you can select the correct audio output that you'd like. There are several ways to interact during today's webinar. We ask that you mainly focus on the public chat. And if you feel like we maybe missed a question or a comment or anything like that, go ahead and use the hand raise feature. But if you click on public chat all the way to the left-hand side, it'll bring up the conversation between everybody within the webinar. And you can just click on that box that says send message to public chat, type in the message you'd like to send, comments, questions, maybe tech support issues, anything like that. Just type it in and hit enter, and then we'll be able to see it and we'll help you navigate through. As we get going, if you guys can take a minute here to pull up that public chat, and you can introduce yourselves, let us know your name, where you're joining us from, your work or your role in Indian country, and your tribal affiliation, please. And then just a final note, if you click on the menu panel that's to the far left-hand side of your screen, it's bright red. If you click on that, know that it will pull you out of today's webinar, but you can just click on the green banner again at the top of the screen to rejoin. But just a heads up, it will take you to whatever you click on, and it'll pull you right out of the webinar. All right. With that, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor for today, Dr. William Latchford. And Will, I'm going to pass it off to you now.
All right, thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's Tuesday is going well. We're almost halfway through the week. We got one more day, so I wish all of you luck for the rest of the week. I encourage you, if you have time, if not, follow through on the recordings over the next 4 days. We're going to take a leadership journey on executive leadership in crisis management when it comes to tribal executive leadership. So these are principles that we believe can assist any leader throughout the process of crisis, but not only just in crisis. These tools can be used on an everyday basis to enhance your leadership skills and ability. So I appreciate you being here and taking the time out of your busy schedule. A little bit about Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. It's owned by Amy Osceola Latchford. She's a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. The business is a small business associated certified business that enhances the ability of public safety and leadership throughout Indian country and the rest of the United States. The goal for Amy for this organization is to ensure that the resources of the team that she's built provides that opportunity to tribal governments and entities and schools and take what they've learned over the years with over 150 years of leadership experience and public safety experience to take that knowledge, skill, and ability and pass the message along. The consultants with Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group range from individuals from Bureau of Indian Affairs to law enforcement across Indian country, from the FBI to local law enforcement, emergency management, fire rescue, to include some public safety and leadership organizations throughout Canada. So we're very blessed to have an organization that just wants to give back and provide that opportunity for other organizations to learn from history and learn from the experience, the good, bad, the ugly, the lessons that we're successful at, the lessons that we weren't successful at. And that's really what leadership is to navigate certain circumstances and then take those lessons and build off of them, regardless if they were good or bad. You can still learn and grow to improve your environment that you work in. As Brooke said, a little bit about me. My name is Will Latchford. I'm a doctor of criminal justice. I've spent 32 years in public safety. I've had the honor and the privilege of starting my career with the Seminole Tribe of Florida and finished with the Seminole Tribe of Florida back in April of 2023. Throughout that journey, I've had the opportunity to not only just grow through the ranks of law enforcement, but I ended up becoming the executive director of public safety, managing over 500 individuals throughout the public safety department and over $80 million worth of budgets annually. So I've had the opportunity to not only work for a tribal government that is an organization that provides that opportunity for progressive and enhanced leadership, but also been able to work around the country with individuals throughout other tribes to assist them on crises from Hurricane Katrina to Hurricane Sandy, and just the COVID experience that we all would like to forget. So it's my privilege today to sit and just provide you a little bit of nuggets of leadership that you may be able to take back to your organizations and share with your staff and utilize during those crises that you may deal with, or those everyday leadership circumstances that you encounter that someone may make a crisis for you. It may not be a crisis, but you as the leader, sometimes it's projected up and it becomes your crisis that you have to deal with. So I'm honored here today to discuss a little bit about leadership with you. My educational background, my doctorate through St. Leo University, again in criminology. I'm currently the co-director of Florida State University's Native American Crime and Justice Policy Institute. And I'm a graduate of the top leadership organizations from the FBI National Academy and FBI LEDA and University of Louisville Southern Police Officers Command Development course that specializes in really the foundation of leadership and the appropriate path to become a leader. So through that process, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a disclaimer, you're going to hear some leadership traits today and some discussions on leadership from Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. We always like to put this in our training. What we discuss today is not to tell you how to run your organizations or to write policy or dictate policy for you. If you do hear contradictions of things that you may interpret today through the presentation, please just understand that if you do have that conflict, always adhere to your organizational policies. It's very important that your policies are followed, not just for your organization, but for you. You work for prestigious organizations, and you want to make sure that your organization's policies are implemented correctly and properly. So it's important to us that you follow your policy. So if you do hear the contradiction or something that may be slight different of what you've been told, always fall back to your organization. Because that's who you work for, that's where your allegiance should be, and get clearance or clarification from your organization if you do have that policy contradiction. So let's talk a little bit about understanding crises when it comes to dynamic leadership. So as a leader, it's simple to lead every day when the circumstances are calm. And a true leader really finds out what type of leader they are when there's a crisis. And that's really when the test of a true leader comes, is when they're put in a position of adversity. And that adversity challenges that leader to really bring out the knowledge and the skills that they have when it comes to the leadership principles. There's many different types of leadership styles, and those styles range from transformation leadership to transactional leadership to servant leadership. Then there's democratic and inspirational leadership. When it comes to crisis leadership, that is all those leadership styles are all built up and come into the autocratic leader, because when you're in a crisis, it usually extends beyond the immediate incident. It's moving fast. It's a time where individuals are looking for somebody to stand up and provide guidance to give them that leadership. So creating cascading consequences that crises do, there's usually a long-term repercussion that usually comes depending on how that leader handles the circumstances. Compounding those effects, crises involve sudden, unexpected events that threaten the stability of an organization or even the community. And it oftentimes requires you as a leader to stand up and make decisive decisions without the consequences of fear being part of that decision-making process. It's very important as a leader that you lead as an example, and that fear is not driving that whole decision for you to make a decision, one for your subordinates, but also for the community that you serve. As we look at leadership's role, it's very critical. Again, on an average day, leadership is very important. People look for you for guidance, but it's not in crisis mode. So emotions are down, individuals are relaxed, and there's usually enough time to include, if there is a time frame, there is enough time to have that discussion, maybe do the research, have that ability to sit back and analyze that decision making. However, in crisis, it's very important, and I always use the term, it's you're doing your average day, but you're doing it on a high-end energy drink all the time, or you're doing it in a level or a capacity that it's unheard of, because things are coming at you so fast in that critical time that your vision and your direction that you're going is a little bit unstable. So through that vision and direction, you need to make sure that you're setting clear goals and communicating with your subordinates, with your coworkers, with fellow leaders, and communicating effectively and on point. It's important that decision making is made collaboratively in a timely fashion, and decisions that are decisive, they're usually made while you're under pressure. And so you have to make decisions very quick. And a lot of times you don't have all the information, where you have to put the pieces to the puzzle together by analyzing the data you do have and interpreting what's going to come next. Communication is so important. As we know, on an average day, if we don't communicate well, usually in the environment creates an opportunity for individuals to make their own perceptions, or even to add their own spin on what that communication is or what that topic is. So it's effective communication is crucial for your subordinates, for your community, to ensure that they're behind you. As a leader, you want people to follow you, and you want them to follow you for the right decisions, and to rally that support. It will provide an opportunity for you to work good with other programs. You'll be able to coordinate resources, and at the same time, good leadership ensures transparency. Everybody sees the direction, they see the decisions you're making, and it's not made in a silo or a bubble where individuals don't know what's going on. So many times in the crises that I've been involved in, and each one is different, but as I said in the beginning, you always learn from crises and how leadership was. I don't think one ever went by to where in one aspect or another there was some area that individuals were in a silo. So The information wasn't flowing out. Individuals didn't know what was going on. And so instead of employees or subordinates looking at the solutions to the problems they were encountering when it comes to the service to the community, they were more focused on the lack of information that was coming from their leadership team. So you want to make sure that communication and coordination is on point if you're the leader during the crisis. Just know you're not alone through that process. Team management is definitely important. I will share with you what I've learned throughout my career and my leadership journey is to ensure that when you lead, use the people around you. Use the people around you to build a strong, cohesive team that can be effective. And you can manage the stress and collaborative efforts to help your community. It's all about the people we serve. And if we don't have a core team when it comes to leadership during the crisis, that's when things fail. That's when we let the community down. And that's when we let our own employees down because we're locked into this it's my way or the highway. When you have a team approach, you have the opportunity to do the crisis in an environment where you have different views and you're able to analyze more than just the thought that you may have on your brain. And sometimes that's difficult, especially if you're the highest leader in the organization. You're looked at as somebody who's supposed to have all the information and you're always supposed to have the answers. The reality is that's unrealistic. As a leader, you're not going to have all the answers. And the way you maximize having those answers and to be positioned in the best possible outcome for success is to use the people around you to help guide the direction. And that's so important that before the crisis happens, when you're building your leadership team, when you're going through the transition of leaders, is that you surround people that are smarter than you, may have a different expertise than you, and people that are going to be honest and upfront and open with you. That's how we learn, is to have people around us to provide us that opportunity to grow. And if we have those individuals around us to grow when it's in crisis leadership or crisis management during an event, our leadership is really going to shine, not for us, but it's going to shine for the community and our employees that we serve. And that's really what it's all about. So when we look at crisis preparedness, we want to build resiliency. We want to look at different aspects of the crisis, right? So the first one is risk assessments. Before the threat even happens or before a crisis happens, on an everyday basis, we should always be looking at our risk assessments. We should be identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and specifically that are in the community, but also our organizations. Because as a leader, you have the enhanced responsibility to, one, ensure that your organization is taken care of and prepared. And also you have the community that you have to ensure is taken care of and prepared. Through that process, you can have emergency plans. You want to make sure your emergency plans are always evolving. A lot of times people get caught in the silo of, well, we have an emergency plan. It sits on the desk. We just dust it off during hurricane season or wildfire season or the winter storms. That's not the case. When we have emergency plans, I encourage you to keep those emergency plans always on your desk. Visit them once a week with your staff. When you're sitting around having coffee in the morning, have those discussions of topics and pick a topic out of your emergency plan, and you can sit and have that ability to train your people in a non-threatening setting. A lot of times we learn more in that the setting where it's not a threatening to anybody. It's not a training environment. It's just a relaxed setting where people feel they have the opportunity to speak. They have the opportunity to give feedback. And that's really what you want, because your emergency plans as a leader should just not be through your outlook. It should be through from the community all the way up to you. So it's a big cycle that you want to make sure when you write emergency plans that it has the input of everybody involved to include the communication protocols. And that's how you enhance that emergency plan that will complement those risk assessments. Another area is training and exercises. These are so important because a lot of times, and I recognize even through my career, is that there's not enough hours in a day and days in a week. and even weeks in a year. And when it comes to training exercises, you try to put them in and fit them in between everything else that you have to do. What I would share with you is that it's so important to do regular practices of these crisis response that are in your plans, because it's muscle memory. You want to make sure that your plans are known by the employees. Many a times organizations have great plans. The problem is the employees do not know the plans. They may have signed off on the plans because they were told, hey, read this and sign this piece of paper and turn it in. That recognizes you have the plan. It's so important to test people on the plans. We want to make sure that the plans are not just learned for the purposes of checking a box. You want to make sure that the plans are trained and those exercises are conducted so people retain the information. Emergency plans are so important, but if your employees don't know the plans and they're not retaining the information of the plans, then the community is the one that suffers. And that is our whole goal when it comes to organizations, is to take care of the community. That's our mantra: take care of the community. You want to make sure that your employees are doing their job and carrying their weight. And it's so important to also, as the leader, to make sure that you're evaluating the plans, and if they have to change them. Don't allow your plans just to sit as written as 5 years ago when they were initially written. Give that opportunity for your employees to say, hey, this has to be updated. This is wrong now. It may have worked 5 years ago, but 5 years later, it's not relevant anymore. So you want to make sure that through that training and through those exercises, that's when you can determine if you're on task or if there's things that have to be modified to provide that higher level of service to your community. Resource allocation is so important. You want to ensure the resources that are available, that everybody knows there's documentation of those resources to include equipment, personnel, funding that's effective for the crisis response, all the way down to from your employees, their home addresses, their phone numbers, a secondary phone number. Sometimes during a crisis, individuals are home and they lose access to phones and internets. We're so trained to get our information from the internet and the phones. When they go out, we seem lost. Well, the reality is if the leadership team and you as the leader have that information at your fingertips, you then can direct individuals to drive to, Bob's house and tell him he needs to report to work. Send somebody to, Susie's house to tell her she needs to report to work. You want all that information at your fingertips so you know what those resources are. You want to know what's available when it comes to all your equipment, your vehicles, the gas, the fuel that you need for your systems. You want everything at your fingertips as a leader, not for you to do the job, but if you know that all those circumstances are there and all those resource allocation lists are there, you're going to be able to make a better decision when it comes to your leadership style when you're confronted with a crisis. And you can deploy your assets and your resources to the right location. And you can do that to ensure that your community is taken care of. As I indicated, effective communication is so important during a crisis. The biggest thing that I pass to you is transparency and honesty. When there's a crisis, people understand what's going on. They're embattled in the crisis as well. Sometimes people don't understand how their emotions are impacting the environment. Through transparency and honesty and communicating with your subordinates in your community, those people that sometimes aren't in connection with their emotions, and they may handle things in a manner that escalates a situation, by being transparent and honest about all the information that's happening and providing those timely and accurate information to your communities, then they understand what's happening. Then they have an opportunity to be part of the solution and not be part of the problem. A lot of times, communication is the reason why we fail. We may handle things perfectly unseen, but the reality is that that's as only good as our weakest link. And if communication is our weakest link, then we're going to fail the community if we have bad communication. As a leader, you want to make sure those those messaging and those communication messages are delivered consistently. It's important to train your individual subordinates. It's important to train your tribal employees. It's important to train the community when those messages will be coming out. If you can provide that opportunity to them where they understand when those messages are coming out, you will be a driving force where the community will stand behind you because they know what to expect. It's sort of like just average everyday communication. A lot of times when information is not passed along to subordinates or even in the community, people add their own spin to it. They add their own emotion to it. And that's what you don't want to happen during a crisis. You want to be able to be that leader that everyone can look up to and see that you're on point when it comes to the information that you're providing to your community. And that information you're providing to your community is accurate, it's transparent, and it's honest. A lot of times during the crisis, we don't want to tell people what's bad. Sometimes you have to tell people what's bad so they understand what you're going through. And you have to be delicate when you communicate that to the community. But there's a way to do it, and it's through good communication and through effective leadership from the leader. And that doesn't happen the moment the crisis hits. That happens every day that you wake up in the morning, you go to work, you come home, and even in your personal life. If you can practice good communication skills and enhance communication through transparency and honesty in your personal and professional life, it gives you a leg up. So when that crisis hits, you're not going to be in a crisis as well. You can do it from the foundation of stability. Recognizing the emotional impact of crisis events, responding with empathy and sensitivity. A lot of times crises, again, like I talked about earlier, the community is affected by the crisis and they don't know what to do. They're looking for leaders to stand up. Well, that's where the calm individual who's the leader can come with the answers and give that individual or those individuals the opportunity to relax and build confidence in the system, right? You don't want the community yelling at employees and creating havoc in the community with employees when it comes to the crisis. How you can mitigate that is through good communication by understanding what the emotional intelligence of your community is, right? If you're starting to hear the underling that there's community is in an uproar because of lack of communication or issues, as a leader, you need to stop and pinpoint that. You need to pinpoint it to make sure you can stop that before it grows. Because once you lose that opportunity to have the community behind you, it's a little difficult to get back. One way that you can use social media is to drive your strategy. Social media can be good and can be bad, right? So you want to make sure when you look at your social media platforms that you're using it effectively, you're sharing information with the community, but you're sharing information that's not going to create more questions or more problems. You want to make sure that if you do share information with your community and you feel that it may create more questions, that there's an out or a facilitation that they can call you directly, or a question answer line that they could go to fill their gap of information. The last thing you want is individuals creating their own answer that's not in line with the crisis or the solution that you're dealing with the crisis. So it's very important when you look at social media that you use it correctly. And we use social media every day, and there's times on social media that may or may not be accurate. So it's important that as leaders that we take that ability that we have as leaders and we push to make sure that when we put something on social media that it's accurate, it's informative, and it's going to provide the community some solace that they can have confidence in what we're doing as leaders. Navigating interagency collaboration. As I talked about earlier, it's so important that your leadership is team leadership, right? You don't do this by yourself when it comes to a crisis. Just understand that, yes, you're the top leader. You're the one that this falls on. It's on your shoulders. But don't fret that. Look at that as an opportunity to build a core team around you through the relationships that you have, and develop stronger relationships with the stakeholders when responding to the crisis. Through that process, that starts way back before the crisis. That starts every day that we come into work and there's nothing really happening or we're on idle time. Every day we have to build those relationships up with our counterparts within the tribe or the organization. So when the time comes where that crisis hits, we're not learning each other. We're not learning how each other works. We're not learning how the other one thinks. So we want to make sure we're always on the same page. And how we do that is do it in the non-threatening setting. Go have coffee, go have lunch, go have, just afternoon, drive around the community together. You may not be in the same program, but drive around the community together and get to know the other person. So when the crisis hits, you're on the same page and you have a little bit of understanding on the direction you're going to go. The other part is joint training. It's so important for tribal programs to work together in joint training. Put everybody in the room together and start dealing with the potential issues in a mock scenario. You want to make sure those exercises are enhancing the interoperability and the communication of each program. Test your employees, test your program, test your community. Bring the community in and do a joint training with them. It's so important to have those relationships built before a crisis happens, so everyone understands what's expected of them when that crisis hits. I also do recognize sometimes it's difficult to get the community in to participate in joint trainings because they have lives, they have things going on in their world. What I encourage you is never stop. If you have one person in that training, that's a win for you. If you have to do it 100 times and there's only one person in that training, that's 100 wins for you. So, and they're going to go back, they're going to talk to their families, they're going to talk to their friends, and at least the message is getting out. There is no excuse for leadership when it comes to an organization to where community programs aren't working together or governmental programs aren't working together. I understand it does happen, but in my opinion, it should never happen. Regardless of the circumstances, egos should be put at the door and programs should be in the same room working together to enhance their policies, their practices, enhance their employees for the betterment of the community. Through that process, you can develop a unified command structure. If you're all in the room together and you're practicing a fake scenario, it gives you the opportunity to see the strengths and weaknesses that each one of you have. And then you build off of that. And you can build off of that not only in that room, but after you leave, you can build off of that to ensure that you're always improving in your environment. So you want to make sure that establishing clear chain of command and coordinated decision-making during a crisis is established. Communications are clearly important. Again, as we talked about, it's so efficient when information is flowing down through employees, down through the community. And how that should work, I look at it as a big circle, is that you have your tribal council at the top, you have your employees. If you look at it as a circle or a clock, you have your employees, the tribal council at the top. You then go down to the 3 o'clock, you have your leadership teams and programs, right? So the council can give the direction, or the top leader can give the direction to the programs. Programs go to the 6 o'clock, they give it to the employees. The employees take that information and they go out and with their boots on the ground, they go out and take care of the community, which would be the 9 o'clock. Once the 9 o'clock gets it, the 9 o'clock is going to be the community's getting the information from the employees or from the leaders' social media or communication venture. And then the council will hear the feedback from the community. So if all those pieces of the clock are working together, then you're going to be more successful when it comes to mitigating those circumstances for the crisis as a leader. You want to address specific challenges prior to the crisis. Sovereignty and self-determination are so important. What I learned over the years is to have that sovereignty and self-determination attorney right at your fingertips. You want to make sure that that person is there not just to deal with your issues to make sure you're on target, but also all the other programs. So when you create your structure, your command and control structure, your expert in sovereignty and determination should be right there to help you through this crisis, at least to provide that guidance. Geographic and cultural situations. That is so important to take into account the geographics and the cultural aspects of your community. As we know, each community is different. And I'll bring you back to a scenario in my career that there was a wildfire out in the middle of the Everglades, and the fire was moving towards the community. Inside the community, there was a cultural fire happening. We had to sit and determine, how do we deal with that? We couldn't put the fire out because of the cultural aspects of what was happening. And then we have this big wildfire coming towards it. So how do we deal with two fires, one that we want to put out, one culturally that we know we can't put out? So how do we deal with that? So we brought everybody together. We brought the cultural advisors into the room. We brought the fire department into the room. We brought the leaders of the tribe into the room. We brought the wildland people into the room, and we brought the family into the room. And we had the discussion, okay, how can we do this? And let's work together. Let's figure out, between all of our knowledge, skills, and ability of everybody in the room, how can we make this happen? And the result was successful. We surrounded the camp with firefighter apparatuses to where the fire wouldn't be able to get to the other fire. And it took a lot of resources to do that, but we did it because we knew the geographic and the cultural considerations was a must. It was important, not only to us as leaders, but it was important to the family of what they were going through in their life. So you want to consider those issues. Again, you want to engage the community. You want to make sure that communication is part of that. One of the things that I think is important is invite them in, of course, not when the crisis is really going, but invite them in to kind of see what you're doing, to provide that opportunity for a community to understand how hard employees are working for them, to me, is priceless. And that's one thing that I think we miss out a lot of opportunities on, that I witnessed throughout my career, is that I wish I had that one more day where I could bring somebody in to show how hard employees are working and how hard program directors are working for the community. And because we didn't do that, they didn't get to see how high quality of employees that they have. They didn't get to see how important the housing director or the housing employee looks at taking care of the community. And I think that sometimes is the disconnect, right? So the community thinks one thing, we're really thinking another thing, and they don't really understand really what we feel as employees, right? So, but it's our job as leaders to make sure we take those two sides and we connect them, so that whole picture is written for the community member, so they see that everything is being done in their best interest, and it's being done by people that care. Again, resource constraints and funding. The other part of this is, when you have a crisis, if you can have your budget person or your fiscal responsibility person right next to you as the leader, so that way they can give you their expert opinion on what's available when it comes to funding, maybe what grants are out there that you can jump on or give direction to other tribal programs on. It's so important to have that aspect sitting next to you as a leader, because as a leader, you're not going to know everything at once. You're going to forget things. You're going to not remember the things that you remember on an average day. And when you're in crisis, you don't look at things the same way as you do when you're in a relaxed setting. So it's important to make sure you have all your resources at the table with you. Leadership in action, case studies. Hurricane Katrina. When I responded to Hurricane Katrina, there was a tribe in Mississippi that was located at 3 different locations. The Seminole Tribe dispatched over 40 public safety personnel up there, that most of them have never been to Mississippi before, let alone the tribe up there. So it was something that, on the way up, we were briefing the officers and the firefighters on the makeup of the community, how the communities were set, the mileage, how far it was going to take them drive from one reservation to the other reservation. We were providing maps to them. So we were doing everything in the crisis before we got to the crisis, just responding up there. So you want to make sure that through your process of crisis that you're forecasting. And that's what we did with Katrina when we responded from Florida, because when Hurricane Katrina, when it hit up in the Panhandle, it hit South Florida first. And so we had all our assets prepared for South Florida to be impacted. And then once it passed by, then we went parallel up and responded to Mississippi. So it's very important that through that crisis, you're forecasting not just what's happening now, but forecast what's going to happen in the next 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, and take good notes so you can go back. Because again, when you're dealing with crisis as a leader, it may cross your mind, but if you don't write it down and have a trigger point where you can go back and reflect on it, you're going to forget it because there's so much coming at you at once. I talked about the wildfire case study. COVID, that's one of those areas that no one knew what to deal with or how to deal with it. We had an opportunity where here in Florida, there was a big meeting in Florida that took place in Central Florida that we responded to. We were able to hear kind of the front end information that was coming into the country. And about 4 days later, we had about 90 people, to include all our emergency responders, get quarantined. And we were quarantined because we were doing a tabletop exercise to prepare us for the COVID-19 pandemic, hoping that it would never impact us, not realizing that we were going to be impacted, and we were impacted during that initial training. So it's important to understand that when you're a leader, you have to lead with action. And through COVID-19, as I indicated, there was quite a few people that were quarantined. And at that point, we didn't know anything that was going to take place or how to deal with it. But I will tell you that the individuals that were quarantined, they worked from quarantine. They were quarantined for between 2 and 3 weeks, but they were working from their homes. Some of them were sick, but they knew it was important for the community to be prepared. So, and that's one of those aspects where your community needs to know how hard your employees work for them. And that's through good communication when it comes to your leadership style. Key takeaways for effective leadership: proactive planning. It's so crucial to be proactive. A lot of times leaders wait for issues to come to them. I can't encourage you enough nothing wrong with waiting for issues to come to you, but you need to be proactive in that planning piece. So when it does come to you, that you're ready. And there's nothing that is going to get you 100% ready, but you can mitigate that with developing comprehensive crisis plans and then practicing those crisis plans with your employees. Even if it's over a cup of coffee or a Friday afternoon, you can enhance their ability to respond to that crisis and to prepare yourself to get back to normalcy after that crisis passes. It's all about resiliency. Again, clear communication is so important. Self-reflect every day on how you communicate with your staff, how you communicate with employees, how you communicate with other programs, and how you communicate with the community. Through that communication, you're going to build that transparency and the trust and that calmness when that crisis hits. People then know you. They know you as a leader. They know how you're going to take care of things, and they're going to be comfortable knowing that you're the right person in the right place, and they're going to be comfortable to know that they have a leader in place that's going to be able to handle this crisis without it getting out of hand, and they're going to be safe. So that is core to the success of any type of crisis leadership. Again, collaboration is so important. Tribal programs are always not going to agree. And what I would share with you on that is you can agree to disagree just like family members do. And that's how you should look at these other tribal programs. You may not agree every day, but everybody's got to be big enough to come back to the table and communicate, work together, build those strong relationships, knowing that it's not going to be 100% agreement, but you can still work through that and build that coordination. That's going to be vital for the response for the community. Everything you do as a leader is about taking care of people. A leader inspires without having to be asked to do so. A leader sets up systems without having to be told to do so. A leader gets things done because people want to, right? You as a leader, you get things done because you want to do it. You don't have to be told to do it. So you want to make sure that as a leader, you inspire not only yourself, but you inspire others through your leadership practice. Leadership matters. And the role in crisis management is paramount for the success of you taking your tribe and your community to get back to some sort of normalcy. Effective leadership can make a difference between chaos and order. And if your leadership is not always at the highest level, then you're running the risk of not taking care of your community. So you want to make sure that you're always at the top of your game. You want to make sure your employees are always at the top of their game. Again, it's about retaining information and then applying that information that they retained. It's not about just checking the box, saying I read it, and letting it go. Make it part of your practice, right? We've all heard the scenario, practice makes perfect. Look at it this way. Practice makes permanent. If you practice until something becomes permanent, then you're going to be better off, right? No such thing as perfection. We all try to reach that. But if we practice to make permanent, then your community will be better off. A couple of resources out there that as a leader, I believe in crisis that you have to be familiar with. You know, FEMA is an agency out there that has a lot of resources. They have a lot of resources that can be overwhelming. And through that overwhelming, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the process that FEMA has? Because we've all been in positions where an outside organization sometimes is so encumbersome that it overwhelms us and it feels like we're challenged to get the job done. My advice to you is to create those relationships inside organizations like FEMA and the National Tribal Emergency Management Council. Do these relationships prior to the event taking place. And what I mean by that is sometimes organizations have turnover. So it's important for you to have kind of one foot in these organizations because of change that takes place. Currently, I understand that there's change taking place. You know, so future right now is really one of those areas we're all monitoring to make sure we know what direction we have to go when a crisis happens with us. But when you have those resources, you have those relationships, and you know those people that work in those environments, it's a lot easier picking the phone up and calling them or emailing them than doing a cold call and trying to figure out who to talk to. So it's important through your leadership process, even if it's just a 30-second call to somebody, just say, hey, how you doing? Just checking on you. How's things going? Take that opportunity to be relevant when it comes to your resources. If you're relevant and you are at their forefront when they see your name pop up on their phone or their email, then they're going to make you important. So stay relevant when it comes to the resources that you have. Again, any type of summit or gathering or training outside of your tribe, it's so important that you can learn through that training when it comes to critical issues in crisis management and preparedness. What we want to look at is building a resilient future. You know, when a crisis happens as a leader, not only do you want to get through the crisis and you want to get through it safe and you want to make sure your employees and your community are taken care of, but you also want to look at forecasting and build that resilience for future, because once that crisis goes by, then you have to deal with that community. You have to deal with those attributes that may have been affected by that crisis, right? So, and I've always looked at it when people respond or organizations respond to help out the Seminole Tribe or any organization that I've worked for in the past. I've always looked at it from the standpoint of when they're here helping us out, they get to leave, right? So when they're here working with us, it's important that they're carrying our torch, that they're doing the work under our expectations as a leader, that they're presenting themselves in a manner that is only accepted by us and by our community that we're in, right? Because they get to leave, right? We don't need a Tasmanian devil coming in, creating a bunch of problems and then leaving. And then that just adds to the number of responsibilities that we have to take care of. So as a leader, you want to build resiliency in your future. You want to do that from the beginning. So you want to assess your current preparedness. Like I talked about before, every day you should be assessing things. You know, you're not going to assess everything every day, but strategically do it. You know what you're responsible for. You know who you're responsible for. And you know the ultimate goal is to make sure the community is taken care of. So you want to make sure that through your assessment every day, You just do little nuggets here and there that'll give you the opportunity to stay relevant in your process when it comes to your organization's evaluation, right? You want to engage the community. Go sit with the community. Go to the elders facility. Go to the youth center. Talk to the younger generation. Talk to them about crisis planning. Talk to them about if they're prepared. Have that discussion with them to see if what's on their mindset, or if they maybe even have feedback for you. It's so important for people to understand that, and they see that you care about them. And if they see that you care about them, you're going to have 100% their dedication to your leadership and to the mission at hand. So engage your community. Seek professional development. Bring people in from the outside to help you professional train. When individuals come from the outside to help you train and educate your employees, there's something good said about that. And what that is that it gives you the opportunity to have somebody come in and look at it from a different view, right? As a leader, sometimes we're in the forest, and being in the middle of the forest, we don't necessarily have the big picture view, right? Because we're dealing with the crisis, we're dealing with the middle of the forest, and we don't have that ability to raise ourselves up to 10,000 feet and kind of look at all those good things we're doing, or all those things that maybe aren't so good. So we want to make sure that we have that big picture, not only of what we see or what we're hearing from our fellow workers, but bring somebody in to give you that unvetted outlook, right? And it's not a hatchet job. It shouldn't be somebody coming in to basically tell you that your world is horrible. It's somebody coming in saying, okay, here's the good things you're doing. Here's the things that need to improve on, right? Provide yourself that opportunity to do that. And sometimes as a leader, in order for you to do that, you gotta sit back and be humble and recognize the fact that people are going to find things wrong in what you're doing. Well, the reality is you'd rather have them find things wrong in a non-threatening setting, a non-crisis setting, than you would in the middle of a crisis. Because if it happens in the middle of a crisis, the community is the one who's going to see it. The community is the one that's going to feel it. And then you're going to be the one that's going to be responsible for cleaning it up. And it's going to be too much and too overbearing because of the responsibility that you have when you're in crisis as a leader. Again, you want to advocate resources. You want to make sure that during your process throughout the year that you encourage and you recruit resources to assist you through that process. You want to make sure that if you're a council representative, that your other council officials recognize the fact that there needs to be adequate funding out there for your programs. If you're a program leader or program director, you want to make sure council understands really when that crisis happens, what type of funding and resources you're going to need when that crisis hits. The key is just knowledge, right? The key is having them understand and putting them in your shoes without them doing your job. If you can put them in your shoes without doing your job, then they have a better understanding of what you do, how you do it, and those resources that you need to get the job done. The importance of communication in crisis management is so important. Again, we talked about internal communication. A lot of times on an average day, we don't recognize or self-reflect on our internal communications that we do with our own employees. As a leader, you have to take that opportunity to look at yourself, listen to your employees, and see what type of communication you're dealing with on an average day. I could tell you through my career, I've had those instances where my communication wasn't at the standard it should be at. And then something would happen and I would see, wow, my communication bad in that arena just got painted into this crisis that we're dealing with now. So I had to do double the work to get the employees where we needed them to be to do a better job. But that takes us as leaders to self-reflect, to ensure that our internal communication on an average day is where it needs to be. External communication is just as important, right? You're not always going to get along with the other programs, but by having external communication every day and sitting down with individuals will reduce the anxiety level. It will reduce the opportunities for disagreements, and it gives you the opportunity to discuss what your expectations are from your fellow programs and other work areas in your organization. One of the things that I would throw out to you today is that, have you ever sat down with somebody and asked them what their expectations are of you and your program, right? And just let them answer that. I would guarantee you that most of the time people will take a couple minutes to try and figure out what those expectations are because they didn't think about it either. Well, that's a win. That puts you both on the equal playing field where you can sit down and develop your expectations together from both sides to create that communication piece to when that crisis happens, then you actually know what those expectations are, right? You can do that internally too. Ask the employees, do they know what's expected of them, right? Do they know what you expect of them as a leader, right? And have those conversations in a non-threatening setting to really get the feedback, because a lot of times it's not that they don't want to know. A lot of times it's just they don't know because they've never been told, or they haven't had the opportunity to have somebody explain it to them what their expectations are. So that's where communication is so important when it comes to crisis management or crisis leadership. Cultural consideration is clearly important. I know in the Seminole Tribe, that is a topic that we always talked about in public safety to try and understand the culture and make sure that we were always, it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a one-time, okay, talk about it and that's it. It always has to be part of the narrative so you understand the environment that you're working in. And it wasn't just the tribal culture. You had a gaming culture that individuals who go to the casino, those individuals sometimes have a different outlook on the gaming world. So when you're working in a casino, how does customer service play into those individuals? What do they expect? Are they expecting a high level of customer service at a gaming facility than they would at a shopping mall? So those are those things you want to sit down and you want to have those conversations about the culture that you're working, from the dynamics of the community, the tribal community, and then just the organizational culture as well. The organizational culture is just as important, because if you have a bad organizational culture, that's going to impact your leadership as a manager inside the crisis. Building transparency and trust is so important. When the community looks at you as a leader, they're looking at you as somebody who is going to be honest with them and help them through. You don't want to enable them. You don't want to enable the community to where they feel it's your job to do everything, right? You want to have that opportunity to have the community support you, but the community plays a role when it comes to a crisis. And part of that role is support. And you build that support through honesty, through transparency, consistent messaging, community engagement, and active listening. A lot of times, just going to a meeting that you're going to listen. As a leader, sometimes you want to talk a lot. Sit back, have that opportunity to just listen. Listen to what people say and try to understand their viewpoint. It is so important for individuals to understand that you care, right? And I'm a true believer that regardless of what tribal program you work in, you care about what you do. You care about the community that you serve. Equally as important is you listening and understanding and getting the individual to understand that you care and that you understand, and you're doing everything you can to try and mitigate that crisis for them. And sometimes by sitting down and listening before that crisis takes place and providing them that foundation and that outlet for them to speak their mind, right, without you taking it personal. Let them speak their mind and what their viewpoint is. Because sometimes people do not know how to communicate. They do not know how to get their message across. They do not know how to share their vision and their viewpoint. And how they do it is through anger. They do it through emotion. They do it through yelling. They do it through screaming. Sometimes as a leader, you have to sit and take that, but you don't take it personal. You sit back and you try to understand where that person's at, go to where they're at, and then move forward together. So you and your community are building that consistent relationship throughout the process. Effective crisis communication strategies. You want to develop the plan. All hazard plans are so important. A lot of times I go throughout the country and I hear programs have an all hazard plan, but they've never seen it before. It's in this tribal program or in this government program, and we've never seen it before. They take care of that for us. It's important that every employee, as you as the leader, that every employee has seen that plan, understands the plan, understands how to enact that plan, and then also understands how the process is to get the plan changed and make it better. So you want to make sure that when you're developing the plan, that everybody is at the table when it comes to your all hazard plans. And that's just not like here in Florida. When we started the all hazard program, probably 20 years ago, the first concept was everybody thought it was linked to hurricanes, right? Because Florida has a lot of hurricanes. The reality is an all hazard plan is not a hurricane plan. A hurricane plan is something different. That's part of the all hazard plan, but the all hazard plan is exactly what it is. All hazards, from gas leaks to crises that are happening in your community, from oil spills to there may be a public safety incident inside your community. That's a hazard. Anything that's a hazard that is going to put your community in jeopardy, that's what that all hazard plan should be. And those individual plans, like a hurricane plan, a wildfire plan, a severe weather snow event or blizzard, that plan, that's going to be inside that all hazard plan. But the all hazard plan addresses those all hazards. And so that's one area that you want to make sure when you build your plan that it's broken out into those individual hazards. So you have that opportunity to compartmentalize each event, right? Because you're going to handle a hurricane different than you will a wildfire. You're going to handle a blizzard different than you would a shooting inside of a community. So each one is different. So you want to sit down and build off of each hazard that you think your community could be impacted by. And that takes you just sitting down with your team, sitting down with others as the leader, and ensuring that you're walking through those steps. You want to establish communication channels. You want to, create a flow chart that gives you that opportunity of how you're communicating. Everyone has websites these days. How long do you change your website? Is your website the same as it is this year than it was last year, right? Social media. You want to look at how your social media is communicating. A lot of times when you look at people's websites, they don't change them because it was created, it's there, we move on, right? The information's on there. The reality is change it up a little bit. Give your websites, your social media sites, an opportunity of a new look, right? Bring people to engagement, right? Every 3 to 5 years, usually people change cars, right? Do the same thing with your websites. Change the dynamics so people see that you're evolving, right? By keeping things the same way, people get bored, right? And they may not remember what they read the first time they saw it. If you put a different spin on it, you change your website, change your social media, how it looks, how the flow of information is. People will be more engaged because they're going to be inquisitive. They're going to be like, ooh, a new website. Let me see what this is all about, right? That's what you want them to do. You want them to recognize, and by recognizing that, they're going to see that great work that you're doing for them. And that's really what it's about. We want them to see that great leadership that you're putting out there. Emergency alert systems, that's so important to have. It's no longer having the bullhorn out in the community or the system that just yells to the whole community that something's happening. With social media these days and the way phones work, we have the ability to send alert systems out. Get your alert system working and get it so it's the best and the highest communication task that you can have. One of the things I would challenge you on is look, when you get your alert system, is take that opportunity to always evolve, right? One of the things that I wish I would have done in my career was change my alert system maybe every 3 to 5 years, right? Provide that new opportunity because technology changes. And as we all know, if you have an iPhone or any type of phone that you have these days, an Android phone, there's always updates that are always changing things. And then the phones are always changing. The new phones are coming out, very often, right? So we want to look at when we have our emergency system, that same things happen. The emergency systems sometimes go out of date. You want to make sure you have a system that is always evolving with time and provides that best opportunity to communicate with your community. Training spokespersons. It's so important to have a consistent message. And before that crisis happens, pick individuals who can talk better than you sometimes, right? So you want to have a backup individual that if you're going to be the face of communication, you want to have one or two or three people that are behind you that are always in the now of information and can provide that communication if you're not there, right? One of the avenues when it comes to crisis communication, you as the leader could get overwhelmed. So you want to make sure you have people that can communicate through the media, through your community, through just the public itself, that communicates that same message. You don't want somebody communicating a different message or writing a different message than really what's going on. So you have another crisis now you have to clean up, right? And that's the pitfall when you have multiple people involved. A lot of times leaders, it's that old adage that, well, if you want it right, do it yourself. No, that's not the answer to this. The answer to this is train people to know what their expectations are, train people to be effective in communicating with the media, with the community, with the public, with other programs. So when they talk, they're talking just like if it's you talking, right? Leadership is about getting the work done through others. So if you take that principle of leadership getting the work done through others and you apply it to your communication plan, right? You'll have people communicating the same way that you do, and you won't have to be that person that's doing everything, right? Because as a leader, you have to be able to say what direction you're going. You have to be able to, and do it in a sound, not a crisis way. You have to do it in a sound decision-making pattern that provides you the opportunity to take care of your community. So you want to train people. If you're not going to be the spokesperson, you want to make sure that whoever you're training that has that opportunity to debrief with you prior to them going out and giving their message, so you understand that they have and they're meeting your expectations when it comes to releasing information to the community. To bring that a step further, you want to make sure that your social media sites are communicating the same way as what you're talking, right? Usually we talk different than what we write. And so you want to make sure whatever is in writing does not create any more of a crisis for you than the crisis you're already dealing with. So you want to make sure that your social media sites are being monitored. There's an opportunity to where if the public can get on there and provide you feedback, you have somebody always monitoring that, not just to answer their questions, but you can create the temperature of your community. You can identify, the temperature of your community. And by identifying the temperature, you can understand if you're doing a good job or if you have to do a better job than what you're doing to bring the community along and get them to continue to support you. And also make sure they're prepared. Debriefing and evaluations are so important at the end of the crisis. You want to make sure internally that, one, you give your folks a rest. Give them a rest, let their brains take a breather, and then bring them back to the table and allow them to provide a debrief session for you. You want to make sure that during that debrief session that it's effective and they communicate honestly, the good, bad, the ugly of everything you did, right? And that's for the purpose of improving. We always can improve on everything we do. Even today, going through this 90-minute webinar, this is a lot of information that's being scaled into 90 minutes because, of course, we know leadership is not, in a bubble, and 90 minutes isn't enough for any of us to really be experts. But this webinar provides an opportunity to pass along information to allow you to take away some nuggets away when it comes to crisis leadership. I will even watch the recording to see where I can do better, where I can communicate better, and how I provide information during webinars. So you always want to make sure you self-evaluate yourself, you self-evaluate your team, you give the opportunity for the team to evaluate your leadership style, how you led them during the crisis, evaluate themselves, and then the community. It's so important to allow your community to provide feedback to you and then provide feedback to themselves, right? A lot of times because we're in crisis, we lose that opportunity to engage the community, and we only hear the negative part, right? If we bring them to the table, it also gives us the opportunity to hear the positive stuff that they saw, the positive attributes that your employees did to help the community as they went through the crisis, right? And you can learn from those aspects. But the cool part about that situation and bringing the community into the fold is it lets them see the hard work and the effort that you're putting out, but it also provides an opportunity for you to hear the positive that they see, and engage with them and ask them what those positive attributes, what they liked about the operation, what they didn't like about the operation. And then the kicker of the whole thing is to ask them what they would do if they were in your position, right? And get their feedback on exactly how they look at things, because they may have an answer that you could use later on, right? Or they may have an answer that has been tested and it doesn't work, and it gives you the opportunity to clarify that and communicate with them in a non-threatening setting to show that your expertise has been down that path. You've looked at that possible solution and it's not feasible and it wouldn't work in the environment. So bringing the community involved into debriefing along with your employees and self-reflection is really a win-win when it comes to resiliency and building your infrastructure for the future. Taking a quick look at social media. Social media is always growing. We know that the social media aspect is used by the public every day. So we want to make sure that we capitalize on social media. And by doing that, we can look at social media when it comes to our daily activities, right? You just don't want to turn on social media when it comes to on an average day and then turn it on when the crisis hits and think that people are going to follow it, right? So by communicating effectively every day with the community provides that opportunity when the crisis hits, they know exactly where to go. Again, just to go over a couple of things, you want to make sure in social media that your message is clear, it's concise. A lot of times people write war and peace when it comes to communicating. Understand what the expectation is of your community and then write that clear and concise message in a language that the public's going to understand. Keep it simple. Allow them to recognize the fact and have the comfort that you're doing the job. The work that you're doing is on target. They're getting the best service from the community, and through that process, they're able to recognize what you're saying is the truth. It's true transparency, and what you're saying is accurate, right? Because this day and age, everybody does fact checks. So you want to make sure the information you're putting out provides that opportunity. When they read it, they can see it, and that's part of leadership these days. We have to recognize and understand that things are moving at lightning speed for us as leaders. And we have to recognize that people are not just going to take our word. They're going to make sure that our word is matching what they're seeing and is matching what they're reading. The decision-making process, again, you want to assess the situation, identify your options that are there. When it comes to that situation, you want to look at the informed decisions by providing that opportunity for feedback from others, communicate that decision, and then monitor and adjust. And this triangle right here should be the kind of your holy grail of when you're going through crisis. If you keep this with you and you use this template of assessing the situation, identify the options, make informed decisions, communicate the decisions, monitor and adjust, and then start back over again through your crisis. This gives you an opportunity or a template to use kind of to keep you structured, right? Instead of living in the crisis that you're dealing with, this kind of provides that opportunity for you to use during a decision-making kind of a platform, right? So this triangle or this tier 1 through 5 gives you that foundation. When you make decisions, this is how you should evaluate all your decisions that's recommended by us. Navigating the dynamics of an emergency response, unified command is the best way to go. A lot of times you've heard the word or the phrase EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center. That's where unified command is. That's where all the decision makers are, and it goes into that pyramid of that one top leader. But that one top leader isn't always the decision maker of everything. That one top leader is going to take that unified command, get the clear chain of command and coordinated decision making from all the organizations or programs that are involved, and it provides them the opportunity to have the best outlook to take care of the community. By having that dynamics of unified command, you also have all those resources or the controllers of the resources in the same room. So if you don't have an EOC or Emergency Operations Center, it's highly recommended that you structure your programs and put everybody in that room until the crisis is done. That's really where you're going to be effective. If every decision maker is in the room, and when they're looking at the operational and the coordination of your resources, you then don't have to worry about picking up a phone. You don't have to worry about sending an email or telling somebody to go find somebody. You have all those decision makers in a room that at the same time, you're all learning the situational awareness of the situation and how the crisis is unfolding, and it provides that opportunity to create a strategic response as you navigate your crisis. Some of the challenges of inter-agency collaboration is jurisdictional conflicts. You know, when it comes to not just outside agencies, you may have policies that conflict each other when it comes to programs, right? So when you say jurisdictional conflicts, it may be just tribal programs have different policies that conflict with each other. Well, those collaborations, being in that same room, you have the opportunity to mitigate those conflicts once they come to a head. And that's the room that you want to do it in. You know, that's where you have all the leaders, and then once it's resolved, all the leaders go out, talk to their people, and say, okay, here's the new rule of the day. This is what we're doing. We understand what the policy says, but we're going to do it this way for the betterment of this crisis, and we're moving forward. But let's go do it, right? Let's go take care of the community. So through jurisdictional conflicts, you may have outside jurisdictions that you have to deal with in the crisis. Invite them into your crisis emergency operations center, or take your operations center and move it to their jurisdiction if that's going to make it work, right? So when you have a crisis, ego has to be left at the door. Jurisdictions really have to be left at the door. But I also recognize the fact that people like to play in the black and white. So by good communications, you can break those barriers and develop a good plan for that crisis itself. And once the crisis is done, then you kind of go back to your normal ways or policies. But you want to be able to break those communication barriers as you navigate that particular crisis. Being in that room together, you have the opportunity to share those resources again. You know how many cars or trucks that housing has. I can tell you from at Seminole, you know, we always looked at how many vans were out there, how many trucks did the tribe have, what program has the trucks, what programs have 4x4s. We're in the room with housing, public works, health department, wildland fire, all the public safety entities, education, recreation. All these programs have resources that can be used by all of us during a crisis. So we want to make sure that by sitting in that room, we can share those resources and allocate them where they need to go without anybody saying, well, that's my van or that's my truck. No, it's the tribe's truck. And for the betterment of the community, we're going to work together and we're going to deploy these resources where they need to go. Just to touch on decision making again, it's one of those areas that's complex when you're in a crisis, but by having those multiple programs and agencies at that government level inside the room, you then can make decision making authority as a team, right? And you can have ownership in the crisis, you can have ownership in the solution of the crisis, and you can provide that opportunity to really be effective and take care of the community and do it together. Do it as one and let the community know that their tribal programs are the elite, that the tribal programs are at the top of their game when it comes to dealing with that crisis. Strategies for effective communication, pre-event planning. Again, having those joint plans and protocols and communication procedures in place before a crisis occurs. It's so important. You want to do joint training exercises, and these aren't the big scale exercises. You can do mini exercises with each program internally, and then do programs, training with other programs, and do small topics. It doesn't have to be like a major crisis. It could be just one topic, sitting down, watching people go through their strategic process in a crisis mode, right? On an average day, like I talked about in the beginning, it's all good when things are quiet and we can just come in, have our coffee, eat our snack, surf the net. Everything's great. I can just get on there and do my work without anybody bothering me. But when a crisis happens, things are different. So you want to make sure that you're conducting the training during that time. So when the training happens, you can put them in an arena to where they feel that pressure in a non-threatening setting. Let them go through their emotional process during the training exercise. So when the crisis hits, they've already encountered that emotion, what it feels like. Touch again on building relationships, the unified command, and open communication. Again, they're all intertwined. All these areas are intertwined no matter what we do. And so as a leader, we have to look at the aspect of bringing all these attributes together in order for us to be successful in the community. The role of a tribal leadership and emergency response. Tribal leaders understand that tribal employees and the tribal community are looking at you for guidance. They're looking at you for humbleness, transparency, and some sort of solution that they can support and be behind, right? They want to be in a position to where they trust their leader and they know that their leader is on top of the game. That doesn't mean the leader has to have all the answers. The leader has a good team behind them when it comes to tribal programs, tribal executives that can provide them those answers and solutions. So the tribal leadership should lean on the experts in tribal sovereignty. They should lean on the community engagement. Listen to the community. They're out there. They hear things. They see things. It may not be 100% of what they're saying, but there's probably some truth into what they're saying that needs to be addressed. So you want to make sure is the role of the tribal leader that you're there, out front supporting the mission, but also navigating the mission to provide the community that opportunity to see that the best is being done on their behalf. You want to address again those unique needs. I can't stress enough the geographical isolations of each community. You're not going to be able to take one plan and make it into your plan, right? So Seminole's plan is not going to work in North Dakota. North Dakota can take Seminole's plan and they can modify it that fits, but it's not going to be paint every community or geographic location with the same brush. So you want to make sure that you get everybody's plan, but massage it to it fits into your communication, your community, your cultural differences, and it fits into all the resources that you have at your fingertips, so you can identify what your needs are. Again, I'm a big believer. Take from each other, but don't just spread it across as if it's going to be your holy grail and give your solution. You're the subject matter expert in your environment. Take everybody else's expertise and then massage it to make it what I would say. I always use the phrase Seminole friendly. We would take people's plans or other tribes' plans or other government plans, even Fortune 500 companies' plans, and we would take it and we'd make it Seminole friendly to fit into what's going to be successful for the tribe. Don't reinvent the wheel unless you have to, but when you have the wheel, you have to change the spokes on the tire and the rim to make sure that it fits and it's going to be successful for your community. You want to build your resiliency, and that's the whole point of being a crisis leader. You want to build resiliency so when you get through the crisis, your community is going to be better off. You're going to understand the community planning that you're going to need. You want to make sure your traditional knowledge and practices are still intact. And by doing that, your cultural sensitivities are respected, and they're still part of the policy and practices that you've come across. And by doing that, you want to make sure that you're building your strength social networks, from social media to just communicating with the community, and that's building that resilience. So every time a crisis happens, you should be building on that relationship with other programs, with your community, so they have the confidence in your leadership. And that's really what it's about. Again, leadership is getting the work done through others. So you're not by yourself. You have a great team behind you. You just have to engage that team and recognize what your role is and provide expectations for the people that are around you. Leadership development for crisis management. Again, situational awareness. This is another tier that you can use when it comes to developing your process before the crisis happens. Situational awareness, develop the ability to assess and quick and accurately understand the potential impacts, right? So that's where those trainings come into play before the crisis, sitting in a room and just peppering questions at people and have them answer you very fast. Make it a game where you can reward them to say, okay, I'm going to ask you this question. I want this answer very fast. And what would you do in this scenario? And throw the question at them, see what comes off their brain, put them in a position to where they're having to deal with adversity. Again, that's going to expose how well they are at decision making and maybe what training they may need to prepare them to be a better decision maker. So you do all of this not in crisis. Same thing with communication skills. As a leader right now, you should be seeing how your programs are communicating internally. You should be looking at just on an average daily basis how they're communicating with their employees, with other programs, all the way down to individual communication with employees on performance appraisals. That's a whole nother aspect that you can sit and evaluate to see how good they are at communicating in a non-threatening situation. And then when the crisis happens, how well will they deal with communication when the crisis happens? Because if they're a poor communicator when there isn't a crisis, when a crisis happens, they're really going to be off the charts when it comes to communicating. So you want to make sure you identify that early and prepare, train them, educate them, and then implement a process to where they can always retain that communication process to make it better for the community. And all while doing that, you want to make sure you're building your team up across the tribe, across your fellow leaders, either at a tribal council level or an organizational level. Leadership and post-crisis recovery, needs assessment. Again, on an everyday, average day, you should always be looking at needs assessment, even if it's weekly. Once a week, sit down, take an hour, look at your needs assessment, right? If you always take these 4 blocks right here, resource allocation, needs assessment, community engagement, and long-term resiliency, and you take an hour a week, for each one of these, and you just build off of it. You continue to build off of it. And then you have staff meetings. You talk to your staff. You talk to other programs. When the crisis hits, you're going to have your foundation built because you're prioritizing all these assets in an environment where it's not threatening, there's not a crisis, and you're building on that workload on an everyday basis, and you're building people up to be better employees for the community you serve. One important aspect of the psychological support, mental health for employees is very important. You want to make sure that you recognize really what the stress and anxiety and trauma level is, not just for your employees, but for the community. So you want to make sure you prepare all this in advance, have institutions on standby that can help you after the crisis that you can bring into your tribe to assist the employees. Going through a crisis is not normal. Stress hits people in different ways, and it's very important that you recognize the fact that your employees and your community is very important, and you want to make sure you provide them that foundation to have support not only right after the crisis, but long term. You want to promote health and well-being of your individuals, and do it now before the crisis happens, right? Train them on trauma-informed care. Let them know what the mental health resources are through your HR department. For the community resilience, you want to bring that to the community and provide trauma-informed care to them. There's programs out there that BGA has that'll bring in trauma-informed care that you can have for free through grants. So educate your community, prepare them mentally so when a crisis does happen, they're in a better position to address those needs. No one knows your culture better than you do. No one knows your community better than you do. You want to make sure that part of this process, that your culture and traditions are one, intact, and they're followed, right? Just because a crisis happens doesn't mean that your culture or your traditions or crisis goes out the window. You can create policies that complement your culture and your traditions, and your culture and tradition can be part of that policy. But you want to do that in advance. You don't want to do that in the middle of the crisis. So that's something that if you do that, you can communicate it to your employees, regardless if they're tribal or non-tribal. So everybody understands what that culture and traditional foundation is and how meaningful it is to carry that along when it comes to enacting policies during crisis. You want to build that culture of preparedness. Again, it's about community education, community involvement, leading by example, and a resource allocation. You know, these 4 areas right here are topics that can lead you, if you use them as a trigger point, they can lead you in the right direction to build a culture of preparedness and get your employees ready, get your community ready, and get you as ready as that executive leader. Because you're not anointed into leadership. You have to learn it. So you have to sit and go through this process just like everybody else within your structure and your organization. Can't stress enough the importance of collaboration. Everybody is a team player, regardless of who they are. You just have to recognize them as a team player and also bring them to the table as the leader. If they're not at the table, bring them to the table. You're the one that has the ability to do it as the leader. Bring everybody to the table that you see can make your program successful and that operation successful to make sure your community is taken care of. Again, it's about taking care of the community and taking care of the people that are there working for you, and it's a team effort. So if someone's not at the table that needs to be at the table, you have the ability to recognize that and bring them to the table. You want to always look at lessons learned, always do that. Lessons learned, the critical response afterwards is so important. And this is where the mental health comes in, because when you do lessons learned, sometimes the emotions come out during this process. So it's a good practice to have when you do lessons learned. The lessons learned has the mental health people in the room with you, so they can support your employees, they can support the community, because going through a crisis, not everybody's built to go through a crisis, right? And doesn't make them bad people. They just need support. And as leaders, that's our job, is to recognize that, to make sure people are taken care of and we do the right thing. Key takeaways for effective leadership and crisis management: again, effective communication, collaboration, and always protect your sovereignty. And you can do all these 3 every day that you come to work. So when the crisis happens, they're already intact. Building resilient future. I challenge all of you to go out and assess your preparation right now as leaders. Engage your community, and then seek professional development, right? Assess your preparedness. Allow yourself the opportunity to look the good, the bad, the ugly, to see what type of organization and where you are as an organization when it comes to any type of crisis. You also want to go out and assess your community, engage your community, and see how they look at, if a crisis was to hit, how they would deal with it. Put those 2 together, build yourself a good contingent training and professional development process that can prepare both to make your community the best. When a crisis hits, you'll be taken care of. The power of community and crisis response is phenomenal. And I know every one of your communities see this. When a crisis hits, everybody takes the gloves off and everybody helps out their neighbor and helps out each other. And in Indian country, it's an aspect that the rest of the country can learn from, is that everybody rolls up their sleeves and gets out in the community and helps. As a leader, you don't want just a fragmented response. So it's important to recognize the power of the community and then strategically train the community, and know what's in the community so you can deploy it and deploy those community members to make your community safe, because you don't want to put people in harm's way. You don't want to send the community out there to get hurt. So if you understand the power of your community, you then can use them to build the resiliency up and ensure that they're promoting their own community to make it safe and resilient for the future. Building trust and confidence in leadership. Again, transparency, honesty, open communication, active listening, community engagement, and building relationships. Again, the 5 areas that if you look at and hold close to your chest, and you use these as foundations, you're going to be a very dynamic leader. Cultural understanding, we went over that. That is so important during crisis management. And I can't stress to you enough that piece, if you have non-tribal members that work for you, that piece is so important to get them to understand what your cultural diversity and traditions are, so they can navigate their work through the process. And if you can provide that part of the policy, you're going to be ahead of the game, because it's so important. And employees just want to help out. They just want to be doing the right thing for you and for the community. So as leaders, take the aspect of your cultural importance and try to bring that into policy and make sure the non-tribal member employees understand that, so they can provide a better level of service to your community. Leaderships and promoting cultural resilience, strong family ties. If you look at your work environment as a family, you're going to build those strong family ties and those community networks, and the employees will follow you. Employees want a good community health and wellness for the community they serve. They want good education and training and resource management. So you have these areas, and you continuously focus on these areas. Employees will back you. Employees will support their leader if they understand the direction and they get the support from their boss. Technology, again, it's one of those areas that's always evolving. You want to make sure you use technology to your advantage. One area that I didn't hit on much was data analytics. There's platforms out there that will help you develop data analytics for the crisis. The only thing I will tell you is not everybody is technology advanced. So be very cautious if you're going to go to a platform to push data out, that it's simplistic and it gives the opportunity for the layman person to understand that data you're pushing out, because not everybody would understand it. And then you have an elder population, a generation that not necessarily is versed as well as the younger generation. So just keep that in mind. Future crisis management, building a more resilient society. That's really what it's about. It's about taking today and building on today, so when a crisis happens in the future, you are built to get through that crisis and you don't miss a beat in your community. Your community is important, your employees are important, and the work that you do as leaders is really the foundation that makes that community successful. In conclusion, leadership is key to building resilience. Again, as a leader, you're not alone, but you have to get the work done through others. And the role of executive leadership in crisis management is essential for navigating complex challenges, coordinating effective response, and building a more resilient future for tribal communities. Embrace the collaboration, the innovation, and the commitment to the community. That you as a tribal leader can play a pivotal role in guiding your community through crisis towards a strong and more resilient future. Again, you're not alone. Use the resources at your fingertip, but don't wait for that crisis to hit. Get prepared. This is our contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me directly. This is our website if we could ever do anything for you. It was my pleasure of speaking with you today. I look forward to the next 3 days talking about tomorrow's strategic decision making in times of crisis. On Thursday, we're going to talk about effective crisis communication strategies for tribal leaders. And then on Friday, we're going to talk about fostering resiliency, a guide for tribal leadership. And that'll conclude my presentation. I hope for the rest of the day, you have a wonderful time with your family. Take care of your employees and look out for each other. Brooke, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for this incredible presentation, Will. Remember, folks, this is day 1 of 4, so we hope that you can join us back here tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I did put today's webinar feedback survey link into the chat. If you could take just a minute or two to complete that for us. They are anonymous, so be as candid as you would like, and it helps us at the Native Learning Center to know what's working, what we can improve upon, and we do share that feedback with our instructors as well. Like I said, day 2 of this great series, Executive Leadership and Engagement in the Time of Crisis, is going to be tomorrow. So you can sit down with us the rest of the days this week. So day 2 will be tomorrow, same time as today, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 10 a.m. Alaska. If you need to watch any part of this recording or any of our other recorded webinars, they are on our YouTube channel. We have a Cathedra webinar archive. And we hope you can connect with us on our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We post all of our upcoming training events to our social media. And if you like podcasts, we have an in-house produced podcast, the Hopathanga Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you prefer to actually watch the interviews with our special guests, then you can find those recordings on our YouTube channel as well. All right, folks. I'm going to go ahead and close out. Will, you have some love in the chat from Celeste, and I hope I see everybody back here tomorrow, folks. Will, I will talk to you soon, and everybody else, well, also will. Have a great rest of your day, guys. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time.